physical wealth. Hello. Today is Monday. I'm a little late, a lot late. Stuff happened again, life hitting hard, and I'm doing what I can when I can to get online. And I had some time to do some things with my aquarium behind me, and the others aquarium that you cannot see. Had some time to get some stuff done with them. I had stopped and I was growing some pothos plants in the lid of the aquarium on the top of the aquarium to come outside of the canopies of the aquarium because it was helpful. And I don't have a green thumb. The fish are growing the plants. So I had some pothos growing on it, and I had the light to the aquarium helping to boost the photosynthesis process of those pothos plants while I was growing them. And so it took away the light from the aquarium. So the aquarium wasn't looking so great. It was a little dark, but it always pops back. So it's going to come back. It's in its rebirthing stage, and it's going a little slower than it was before because it wasn't getting light. So if you were watching the episodes and you were like, what is she doing with that aquarium? What's going on with that aquarium? I was growing some pothos plants outside of the aquarium because it's helping to clean the air and filter the air from a lot of toxins and stuff, making the air more breathable so that I can enjoy the foliage on the outside aquarium, not just all the plants on the inside. The plants on the inside are great, but I really am enjoying the pothos plants, and I was upset because I couldn't grow any plants or anything. Everything kept dying. So when I figured that out about the pothos, I was like, okay, we're doing something now. Thank you, fish. Thank you, discus, and the rest of y'all in there. But anyway, I wanted to give people enough time to come on. So I did that little icebreaker explaining the aquarium in the back. And the reason why I'm a lot tardy, because I'm trying to do a whole lot of things at once. When it's just team you have to stretch yourself thin, and people just have to be understanding. This is a show where I dedicate some volunteer time to help improve mental health and inform people and organizations that mental health is physical wealth, and it is invaluable. We just have we have to wait for the statistics to catch up with the reality. And that's why I say, if you've been watching some of the other shows, I said I really don't like statistics because as a researcher, I've and writing for over 20 years in this area, I've noticed a lot. And I can conclude that I don't like the way people do their statistics. Anyway, this is an interactive show, so please feel free to comment. If it's not about what I'm saying now, and it's about other shows, just feel free to comment and say something. Hello, Shananthi, I appreciate you coming. Stay tuned, and make sure you have your questions ready. Have your questions ready, or ask on the go. I don't know, but anyway. I appreciate people being vocal and interacting. Today's show is being more vocal. I noticed that there's oftentimes when people say they wish I would talk about a subject, and I'm like, well, why don't you come in the comments of the show and say what that is so I'll know what you're saying. And, people are shy. They're not as vocal. And a lot of people, they want to stay in the background. And I get it because I wanted to stay in the background too. But my husband was like, come on. You know how that is. If you got somebody you with, you got to help and do whatever they want you to do. So anyway, regardless of the fact of me embracing the background, I have to start to be more vocal and seen on the fronts, I guess. But anyway, I don't know if you've been watching all the previous episodes, but if you haven't, check them out. I say some things. I get more personal. I am being more vocal about a lot of things and more specific. Previously, I didn't feel comfortable being specific because I don't want people to feel like I'm talking from my personal experience alone and it's just my opinion or, just my thoughts and my conclusion. It's not about me. It's about what's actually a reality and consistently so from person to person, regardless of their location, gender, age, profession, or whatever. So I want you to get a holistic picture as opposed to thinking, oh, well, here go this egghead, or here goes somebody that think they know it all, or here goes somebody that's pressing yet another opinion. Social media is full of people and their opinions. It is not like that. So I want you to feel, get the feel for the facts of where the information I'm giving you is derived from. I know some people were like, well, they don't have time to read and they don't have time to go back and study and research and, find out these things for themselves. So I had to figure, what do I do to help? How can I help that? Because now that's a big challenge. I'm always facing these challenges people are presenting, and it's difficult because it's like it never ends. It's like you got to keep making it easier, keep making it more accessible to people, and then you have to like even spoon feed it to them because they just don't have time. And I get it. I get it. It's so much going on in today's world. And, mental strain is a major thing that a lot of people are dealing with, but there's not really a panacea for it yet. So because there's not a cure-all and there's not a way to diagnose it that covers everybody in such a way that it's like, oh, okay, I know what's wrong. You're a little stressed out, and you're stressed out because of, these personal matters, and you're stressed out because these occupational matters or whatever. For example, a lot of people are stressed out because, they have to be muffled about something they're experiencing because it's traumatic for them and it's devastating to them, but somebody else is going through so much worse. For example, take the January 6th situation. A lot of people were negatively impacted by that, right? A lot of people's security clearance is on hold because they're trying to sort out some January 6th chaos and drama, but they can't really feel comfortable being vocal about that when it's some people that's on trial for being on the wrong side of that decision for January 6th, being on the wrong side of the fight for what was happening in the moment at January 6th. And it's still affecting a lot of people in the right now, as even though it happened, a couple of years ago. So it seems like, oh, well, I won't say anything about, how this security clearance is an issue because, employment is really backed up and people are losing their, livelihood because the January 6th situation caused such a backlog that they can't be gainfully employed the way they were before the January 6th chaos. It's a lot of changes that's taking place as a result of the January 6th chaos. And a lot of people are like, well, I'll be patient, but it's like I'm furloughed. I can't talk today. But when things are rather personal and emotional, it's like it can make you tongue-tied because people, they're good people and they're impacted by these problems. And I hear about it. I hear about it because there's a lot of good military people who have retired, people who are trying to retire. They've done their time. They've served their country. And they're like, well, what kind of employment can I expect when I get out? And it's like, Yeah, well, you might have to put that on hold, especially if your security clearance isn't up to date. And a lot of military people, their security clearance, for example, when my husband would deploy from one duty station to the other, he would have this long waiting period where they have to redo the security clearance. And it took a long time, but nothing like what it's doing now. And those people who work to um, secure those people's security clearance, to clear them with their security clearance, the ones who are giving them the lie detector test, the whatever, all the rigmarole of maintaining their security clearance or reinstating it, or initially assigning the security clearance. Nobody's really thinking about all of that because everybody's focused on the January 6th trials. They're focused on the surface of the problem, and no one's really diving deeper into all the aspects of it, that a lot of people are being hurt. Good people that had nothing to do with none of that chaos during January 6th. And it's really sad that you seem like you have to pick all the lives that were needlessly lost on January 6th to the people who are now living and losing their livelihood because of the actions and activities of the January 6th chaos. And then we're in a political environment where we are daring to venture down such a dark alley that could lead to more chaos, that people are being forgotten. People are indirectly being impacted, and they're being forgotten that this is a problem for them, and it's undeservingly so. You have a lot of people who, for example, that livelihood was paying for their medical expenses. That livelihood was keeping them afloat, because the generation they're in now, their parents are living longer, and now they have to try to find a way to pay for their elderly care of their parents when they can't afford it. They can't afford to pitch in that little bit anymore, but they can't live with a child that's an adult now because they don't have the income. So even that is a problem. Studies show that the target of a problem, the target of a that's being victimized, is not the only person that's being impacted by the problem. The witnesses, I said it on previous shows, and I gave the example of what the studies are. So please feel free to go back and watch those. I'm going to just move forward with the discussion today and give examples as to how it applies to real life right now in current events. So back to what I was saying, we're seeing all those things that I talked about in those previous shows manifest now as we are trying to figure out these political moves that's going to impact us in ways that a lot of people are going to feel compelled to be quiet about and just suffer through it silently, because it has a greater effect on the surface level that is so traumatic and costing lives, that the lives that is costing slowly, people are slowly losing their livelihood, as opposed to people who have abruptly lost their lives. So those who have abruptly lost their lives are being more readily spoken of than those people who are slowly losing their livelihood. The elders who feel like they're a burden to their families because they're old, they can't work anymore, Social Security isn't paying as it should, and it's a little slow, and people just have to make different decisions, and it's all as a result of January 6th chaos. We had the pandemic, and there was some backlash that impacted jobs then, when people were furloughed because of that. And then the government shut down, and There's times when, the government is shut down and everything's going fine. So when it shuts down and everything isn't going fine, you really have to imagine that the people who are impacted by it, by the multitude, they're just suffering through it silently, because all the people who are living out loud and explaining that they lost someone as a result of all the chaos. And it makes you feel like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't say how it's devastating to me, because at least I'm still alive. At least I'm still able to keep going and doing the things I'm doing. It's like we keep trying to justify being silent. And a lot of times people, they're not silent for the reasons you think they're silent. They're silent because they don't know how to vocalize what they're going through. But people should be more vocal. People should be more vocal to say, yeah, I understand that you lost someone, but y'all losing me too. Y'all losing me and my family. Y'all losing my my elders in my community, because this is not just, it didn't stop. It's not over just because the action isn't happening right in this moment. The problems are continuing despite the fact that the act is over. So if we were more vocal now that the moment is over, we should say, yep, that's a problem for me. It's continuing to be a problem for me. Food is scarce because finances are scarce. Self-improvement is scarce because mental health is scarce. It's just, we're not as vocal as we should be, because all the things that we feel like, oh, well, it's not that bad, I shouldn't say anything. You should say something. You should say, I'm okay, but you should know it's not okay. It's not okay that the problem continues on and we're threatening to continue to go down this dark hole with no way out. And that's a problem, and it's concerning. It's concerning to the point where a lot of people feel so hopeless and helpless that they're like, well, I'm just going to not be involved in it at all. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to watch the news. I'm not going to be around anybody that's talking about it, because I just can't deal. That speaks volumes. Whether you know it or not, that speaks volumes, because those people are saying, I can't take anymore. I'm shutting down completely. You have to help me. You have to reach me where I am, because I'm not going to go anywhere else. I'm going to stay right here. And unless you catch me, this is going to get worse. How do we know that? Because history shows it. Every time we look back at these chaotic events in history, we can see the same thing. We can track the same actions where people have behaved in the same way. It's just a different generation. It's just a different topic. It's AI instead of people actually going on the computer and inputting it for themselves as computer programmers. It's instead of computer programmers, it's people in the mainstream media. And if it's not the mainstream media, then it's social media. So it evolves, but it's still the same problem. The primary problem is people are not being as vocal as they need to be, because they feel, okay, I shouldn't say anything because it's not as bad as that person and their situation. You should say something. Don't shut down. Don't withdraw. Don't hide in a hole. Don't completely abandon all hope because you feel like your voice isn't going to be heard, because it's not as significant as those voices who were suddenly ended. Be more vocal. Be more vocal. Now, I wrote a book because I wanted people to understand the fundamentals. And in this book, I'm going to put it up here for you so you can see it. It's called Generational Wealth. And on the back, I explain how I wrote this book to help people to understand things and to improve mental health and to help you for more than anything to understand that, you know, your intelligence is not primarily based on what institution you learn from. It's all about you and your individual experience, your lived experiences, the books that you're reading, and everything that you choose to do. You can't get everything from a brick and mortar school or online school or a faith-based institution. You is something about you. And in this book, I try to help you understand that. In the first chapter, I have this picture here. I put a couple of pictures throughout so you can try to, see and get a feel for what's in the book for yourself. But on that, in that first chapter, I explain generational wealth is the ability to live adroitly, to maintain, a desirable lifestyle. It's not about how much money you make necessarily. It's not about how your intellectual property, how smart you are. It's a mixture of adroit living as a whole person and meeting all of your needs, all of your hierarchy of human needs, your security, love, feeling of belonging, your faith. And in the first chapter, I also talk about things, and I highlight in it in bold print the words. It's not a bunch of pages. It's not a very big book. It's only 123 pages. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3 to understand, because I explain how I have helped as a homeschool instructor. I've helped people who were on IEPs and had learning disabilities and couldn't understand. I helped them raise the learning curve in their class, and change some things and turn some things around for the better. And I used a lot of formal logic, which I talk about in this book. I used a lot of intuition and formal logic and encoding process. People have different encoding process where they take information in. I explain that in this book very succinctly, very quick and to the point. I explain what a phenomenon is. I explain the cognitive flexibility, which a lot of people do not emphasize, because it's like you cannot be controlled of what to do and how to do what people want you to do if you realize you have a cognitive flexibility that says, I tried this, I did what you said, I'm not doing what you're saying because it's not working out for me, and it's like, what did you say, Eddie? No, I didn't see any comments. I saw Sean Anthony's. He's from Facebook. I saw Facebook, so I don't know what it is. But we're not being as vocal because we're not understanding to trust ourselves, to have more confidence in ourselves. And that is a phenomenon. That was a phenomenon that was derived from people trying to control and manipulate people's behavior in school via the Pygmalion and Golem theory. The Pygmalion theory is, oh, well, you like me, you trust me as an authority figure, and I tell you, you can make it, even though I know you cannot make it. But because I tell you I believe in you and you can make it, you start to you turn it around and have a more positive self-fulfilling prophecy about yourself, and then you start to thrive because now somebody that you believe in, somebody you trust, is telling you, and they're an authority figure in your life, and they're telling you, I believe in you, you can do it, you can make it, and then you go from failing to thriving. But studies were not understanding, because it wasn't consistent enough to say that that was the direct cause of why the person who was failing started to thrive. So they came up with the golem theory. The golem theory is, and they used all these things in school. That's why I use brick and mortar school as an example. So they said, well, the golem theory is when you say an authority figure or somebody that you know and trust, they say they don't trust you. They don't believe you can make it. They think you're going to fail. And because you spiting them, you're going to thrive anyway, just despite them. But that too was inconsistent. And like I said, you know, researchers, they like for things to be consistent because they like to know the exact aspect of each thing, that each stimulus, each thing that they applied to a situation that altered the outcome. But they couldn't, because there was so much inconsistency in it. They were like, well, we can't scientifically prove, because we cannot do this exact thing each time. And that's why it is called a phenomenon. We can't do the same thing each time and get the same exact outcome. We can't do it. We can't do it. And that's why chapter 2 is called Phenomena. And in chapter 2, I explain exactly what I just told you about phenomenons. A lot of times people, they over complicate things because they want to seem as if they know something more than what they do, and like put aside your lived experience to substitute it with their scientific research, to make their scientific research more validated than your personal lived experience. In my final academic contribution, I put that to rest, because that is not true. You should not put anyone's lived experience below what you can contrive in a study, because you're manipulating the statistics. For example, current events is showing that people are taking these polls to these political polls to see who they're going to vote for. And it all depends on what day and whose poll you looking at that says who everybody's voting for. And it can be stressful because the statistics want to favor whomever it is that's paying for it, whomever it is that's going to continue to fund it, so the people can keep taking these evaluations, taking these surveys, conducting these studies. So if you tell them things they don't desire to hear, they're going to do something to change it. And this is across the board. This is not just me saying it. This has come to light, and it's been a problem for quite a while. It's a phenomenon. It's something that happens, and people cannot control it. They cannot prevent it. They cannot predict it. And they're not being as vocal as they should about it, because they want to continue to perpetuate the idea that someone has control, even when it's not. But in this book, I tell you, I explain it to you really clearly and really succinctly. And I try to help you to understand how these processes became so widespread. I explain, as I have in other episodes, I explain what knowledge is. I explain mnemonics, and how sometimes people, a mnemonic is when sometimes, you know you're forgetful, and you'll do something to help yourself remember. There was a movie about it with Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish, and Kevin Hart was like the one who was learning, but he wasn't learning in the manner in which he could retain the information. So his encoding process was a little stuck, and she would hit him to jar his encoding process to be more effective. And then she said, well, there you go. You learned. So, and you retained the information. So she would hit him, and then he would learn and be able to apply the information in the moment that is appropriate. So, but I don't talk about that in the book. I talk about, I'm just using that as an example. What I like to do is, a lot of times it's distracting, all the people's personalities and their mood swings and their biases and the things that they do to hinder somebody who is seeking or even paying to be taught or educated or helped or led. You know, a manager or in your workplace, they're paid to guide you. They're paid to supervise you. They're paid to build a team that's efficient and effective for the company goals. But oftentimes you have these very people, teachers and supervisors and managers, who are the hinderers of your success, and you're failing to thrive as a result. And it's like, why? And you are feeling those things, you're encoding that, you're understanding that, and it's distracting you and your encoding process and your ability to apply information in a practical application. So you're like, man, I'm trying to do what I got to do, but I'm distracted by all of this stuff. So what I like to do, this is just me, and it's crazy, it's really crazy. I like to identify, and I like to let the people know that I've identified who they are. So what I do is, I'll purposely misenunciate something. You know how sometimes people have those Freudian slips and they'll take it back, or people are say, oh, I didn't mean that, and then they'll walk it back. I let it go, and I see, what are you going to do? Are you going to show yourself to be helpful? Are you going to show yourself to be the enemy that you are? Are you going to show yourself to be someone who has taken the authority figure, and you're going to do the right thing as whatever title you're assuming, whatever authority figure you are, whatever your role is? Are you going to do your job? Or are you going to be ugly? So I'll misenunciate something, I'll mispronounce something, but you get the gist of what it is. And while you're getting the gist of what it is, I'm getting the whole picture of who you are, what you're about, and how to talk to you and how to keep you at arm's distance. That's the crazy thing that I do. I've seen other people do it, but I'm just being more vocal about it. And I've seen, like, my elders in the various communities that I belong to, I've seen them do it. And I'll be watching them interact with someone, and they'll do something so slick and sly. They'll say something to the person, and it would inform them that that person is an enemy. And they'll smile. And then when they walk away, they say, that jive turkey, I ain't going to talk to them no more. That backstabber, I ain't going to be involved with that person no more. Oh, that person is a friend of me. You know, all of these phrases came from those experiences. And I learned a lot from them. And I've applied that to my life because it helps me with my mental health. That's why I'm sharing it with you. Because if it helped me with my mental health, maybe it'll be able to help you with yours. So you can identify more readily who is for you, who is against you, and what you can do about it and what you should do about it. And just because somebody is not, 100% in your corner and they're against you, you do not have to act. You do not have to react. You do not have to do anything. Just be informed. That's all. Just be informed. And in my book, I'm trying to help you to understand and be more confident. So in the third chapter, I talk about education and wisdom. I talk about what is education. How are you educated? A lot of people think they go to brick and mortar school or any institution of learning, and they think that that institution of learning is supposed to teach them what they need to know. That's somewhat accurate, but you're supposed to take the initiative. You're supposed to take the initiative to learn, to grow. They give you a fundamental level of a baseline understanding, and you take that baseline and you grow, but you don't let that be all that you know. A lot of times when I was in school, um, people felt like, oh, that's all you should be limited to. And it's like, I didn't know. You should have said that. You should have said that because I didn't understand what you said. So I read the coursework material and I still didn't get it. I didn't understand. And I'm like, I still had questions. So I went further and I looked into something. That's how you get wisdom, because you're going to acknowledge your shortfalls and your shortcomings. And instead of just embracing it and moving on, you're trying to correct it. That leads to wisdom. And I explain some things about that in this book. And then I moved on to how all of that leads to gainful employment in chapter 4. And I show you how what gainful employment is. What does it mean to be gainfully employed? I can work at any job and be gainfully employed, because gainful employment means you have enough income. I explained it a little better in the book, but it means you have enough income that you can sustain your lifestyle, and whomever it is in your household, that's your lifestyle. You can sustain that despite inflation, despite chaos in the world, despite the government shutdown, despite whatever's going on, you can still sustain yourself. How can you do that? A lot of people don't know how. You got to get the book. You got to get the book. I can't explain it to you any other way than to show you in this book how you do that. And then there's a chapter, the final chapter 5. It's a very short book, even though it's 5 chapters. I sectioned it that way. So when people read the book and then they have questions, then we can elaborate on that a bit more here live and interact. I talk about mindfulness and triggers. I've said it before on previous episodes about being aware, being alert, being mindful, as the definition was previously, before, what was it, a year ago? Being mindful was to be alert, to be aware, and a lot of people were calling it woke. And then they started to toy with that terminology, and then to tear it down and get it into a political mud hole. But to be aware of what's going on, but not to necessarily react to it. It's like, oh, are you aware that I'm trying to hurt you by what I'm doing? But I'm not going to say that directly. People will keep poking the bear, and they're poking the bear because they're like, you don't know. You don't know I'm poking the bear. You don't know I'm intentionally poking the bear, because I don't think you're aware. I don't think you're mindful that I'm poking the bear. But I explained in the book that mindfulness changed. I didn't say that it was because of, all these evolving definitions and how people are taking things and turning it around or whatever, as a result of the popularity of social media and, the make it make sense generation or movement or moment. I don't know. But mindfulness changed to mean, or to include, I should say. I think it's an inclusion as opposed to either this or that. but to include that when you are mindful, you're aware that these things are happening and people are poking the bear on purpose. You're mindful to, instead of allow their behavior to dictate your future and your outcome, you pray and you start to be more mindful of how you react, because your first response is to pray. Like, God, this person is on my last nerve. Whoo, if you don't do something real fast, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. I'm going to need bail. I'm going to need an exorcism. I'm going to need some stuff. Okay. You got to do something. A lot of times people ignored how centuries old studies and philosophers have already concluded that complex things can be happening at the same time. So they put that aside and said, well, the research within the last 10 to 20 years is not showing that. It's not saying that. It's not saying it because people wanted to discover their own thing. And they wanted the credit for discovering their own thing. So they didn't say those things. They didn't have those empirical studies and seminal studies that support that. Empirical meaning physical experiments. Seminal meaning in writing. And it's like, well, we haven't said it in the last 20 years. So now that no one said it for the last 20 years, let's make like it's brand new and tell you when centuries old studies said, hey, people understand these complex things that occur in the same moment. So you trying to break it up as separate entities when it's actually two things that's occurring at the same time. It's two aspects of the same situation or more. More aspects of the very one act. For example, I mentioned how January 6th is impacting people in their employment and their elder care and in their lifestyle and their livelihood. And a lot of people think that on the surface, because it's just surface level, they can't say anything. So because they feel like they can't say anything, some people think they don't know. They don't know what's happening because they're not being more vocal about what's happening. And then you have these studies, and the studies have skewed statistics because this is omitted from it as if it doesn't exist, as if because people aren't aware or aren't mindful or aren't alert or woke or whatever terminology helps you to understand. They know. They're just not saying anything because they feel obligated not to say anything because their situation is not as bad as someone else's. But it does not fail to support centuries old studies which have already concluded people are cognitively aware that complex things are happening all at the same time, even if they do not mention all of the variances of the same complex problem. Okay, I don't know why I cannot comment. Just know I am watching, going back to YouTube. Okay, I don't know why you can't comment either. Studies have purposely skewed stats. Yes, they have purposely skewed them. And a lot of times researchers are stifled because when they come out and say something, they are bashed or their livelihood is threatened to be taken away from them. But they still got those papers and articles out there. They still have, little things that you can find out there, Easter eggs that you can find that says, wow, he told the truth and then he disappeared. She told it like it is. And what happened to her? What came of her? What happened to furthering this understanding and advancing this kind of information to help us to have a conclusion? We're just left hanging here. It's just a cliffhanger. And it's like we're looking for more. And it's like not there because that person was stifled. That person had their stuff taken away from them and their voice was stifled, it was removed, it was put to the background, whereas the people who we want to hear from saying the things we want them to say, they've been moved to the forefront. But it's caused such a major concern with mental health that it has financially devastated businesses, organizations of various sorts, and institutions of various sorts globally. And I wrote about it in my internationally trending dissertation, and I explained where it came from. I explained where it is and the root. And people, I know it makes people uncomfortable, but I didn't do it for that purpose. I did it for the purpose of helping us get back to a mental stability, because people aren't writing about the financial losses that everybody's feeling as a result, a direct result of these things. That's why it's important to be more vocal, because a lot of times the stakeholders and stockholders who supporting these financial endeavors, they don't know what's going on. The information isn't getting back to them. They only know they're losing money, and they only know their money is fluctuating like a lot. And it's like, what do we do about it? Well, you don't pull your stocks out. That's what they tell you. Don't pull your stocks out. It'll go back up. Anyway, I'm not saying that it won't, but I'm telling you why it is fluctuating. That's why I'm going to break down and that's a good idea. That's a really good idea, because a lot of times, for example, when I was going for my PhD, I had a chair who also doubled as my SME. Well, a SME that doubled as my chair, and that wasn't right. That was against the contract. But anyway, she was purposely not trying to help me. And she was purposely telling me that the theory that I was looking for was the wrong theory. I knew that I knew already. I didn't react. I just kept on working with her. I knew already she wasn't for me. She wasn't trying to support me. She wasn't trying to help me. She wasn't trying to do her job that she was paid to do and assigned to do for me, with me, or anything regarding me. But anyway, she purposely misled me. But I could not go down that rabbit hole, because I had a job to do. I had to stay focused, and I already knew what she was about. So I was like focused. I'm focused and committed to following through with what I have to do, because I already know you're not here to help me. When she told me to my face in a recorded Zoom meeting, no one's going to help you, she wasn't telling me nothing new. I already knew. So that goes back to remind me everything she ever said was never helpful. So I'm happy Eddie's going to go over that on Thursday. The more you know, the more you grow. Yeah. And a lot of times, like I said, you have to teach yourself. You have to learn and study for yourself. Take the fundamentals that they give you, and it's not going to answer all your questions. Go study some more. Study to show yourself approved. That's what a lot of faith-based leaders tell their followers. That is the fundamental understanding of the faith-based practice. You study to show yourself approved. You don't just listen to what other people are saying and take them at their word. We pray all the time, whether it's just in our hearts or out loud. And we don't even listen to God. That little voice, that silent, still, strong voice that tell us, nope, don't do that. That's not right. We don't even listen to that. So how you gonna listen to people who you know have an ulterior motive? It's like you're self-deprecating. You're hindering yourself. You're hindering your own development, because why? You're trying to get along. You're trying to get a grade from somebody because the pen is mightier than the sword. You're trying to what? You're trying to get a degree. Well, there's a different way around that, because it's not exclusive to the person who is hindering you or the culture of people who are trying to hinder a particular culture of people. And at the appointed time, everything will be brought to light and things will move in your favor. You got to stand still and be patient and faithful, because history shows it always turns around. I said before in previous episodes, I said people are going to want to be at the party when everybody's having a party, despite hindering others, despite the biases that they purposely inflicted on people intending to harm them. I said they're going to still want to be at the party, and they're going to at some point understand you got to change. You got to do the right thing so you can be at that party. And then we saw the DNC finally have the Democrat Party finally have their candidate nomination. And it was a party. It was a party going on up in there. I saw it looked like a church lady, a church mother. She had on the hat, when they got that hat on, the church hat. And she was standing there in the church in the Sunday best. And she had a hat on, and I'm looking at her like, "Ooh, wee, mama, you probably didn't even know you about to have your first club experience over in the DNC." Okay, it's supposed to be a bit more conserved, but people are under so much stress. They're under so much stress. It's two choices: succumb or overcome. Those are the only two choices. And if you succumb, it's not to say that you're over, that you're in it, that you're fatalized, because some people did succumb and they were in the RNC party and they were at the DNC party like, yep, I was over there with the RNC, but I realized the error of my ways, and that's not even what it's about anymore. It's not about Republican and Democrat. It's more about right and wrong. It's more about moving forward in history or going back in history. It's more about being United States or being divided and conquered. It's about, something bigger than what I thought it was. So now I can't stay over there. I want to be at the party. Yeah, we in the majority. Everybody wants to party and nobody wants to go back. Nobody wants to go back to a time in an era that was dark. Now that we've seen the light, now that we've seen the error of our ways, we don't want to go back there. And I thought I was with the most intelligent group of people, the most moral group of people, but I found they didn't have morals. And not only did they not have morals, but I'm struggling to listen to them because it's boring. I'm bored. They're doing the same thing and I'm expecting it to get better, but it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. I'm still struggling. I'm still waiting for my turn. And then when I finally get a little money and think I can go on vacation, it's shootouts happening. I think I can go take my little money and get me a couple of groceries because I got a little bit extra pocket change and I want a dessert. And I saw some ice cream on sale. I'm going to go to the grocery store and get some ice cream, but it's bullets ringing out. I think I can afford to take my kids to a private school now because I'm getting a little bit more money. And I take my kids to school and they calling me, telling me it's a shutdown. It's some danger on the campus or around the campus or shootouts up inside the buildings. We're finding that we do not want that because to go back means it will get worse. And a lot of people are starting to understand that. They're starting to understand because when you go backwards, people are frustrated. They are mindful. They are aware. They are triggered. And that's why I put in this book so you can understand mindfulness and triggers. Studies are aware that this is happening. Researchers, scientists, we are aware. We're not being as vocal about it because as scientists and researchers, observation is key and not how we are manipulating these things and these occurrences on our own accord so we can manipulate the statistics and the outcomes. See, that's not how you do that, but that is how some people do it. So some statistics can be iffy, and some statistics are more accurate. For example, when you are reporting, as I wrote in my internationally trending dissertation, when you are reporting the lived experiences of people, that's an empirical study where you are not in control as the observer and the researcher, but you are still in control of what it is you are reporting, what information you're stating as fact, how you're manipulating the outcome to say how it's actually financially impacting the whole, not just the one aspect, because each aspect impacts another, like a domino. And you have a bunch of dominoes lined up, and you knock over one, is going to impact the other. Whether it's mimetic isomorphism or absorptive capacity, in which the systems of the workplace, of the job market, is dictating and signaling to the other. It's all a whole. It's a puzzle, a really big puzzle. Take a picture. Take this picture and then break it up and cut it up into a million pieces and then put it back together again. Even the tethered parts become significant. Even the pieces that's blank, but there's a part of the whole, it's now extremely significant, because without it, there's a hole, there's a gap. And you don't know if there was something there or not there unless you have all the pieces. So even if it's a piece that's tethered and you're trying to put it together and there's a little bit of crack in between, but you can see from the two pieces or all the pieces that you put together that that was just a blank piece. It's significant information. It's significant facts. What's insignificant? Well, that's the statistics that people make up just so they can stay employed, so that whomever is funding them to keep researching and studying, well, they can keep getting money to keep researching and studying. But it's more important to understand the phenomena in that. And the phenomena in that is you're still losing money. You're losing more money than you could predict. And the stockholders, stakeholders, and investors, and even the consumers, they're not happy with that. They're not trying to stick around for that. They don't want to go back to that. They want to move forward so they can invest and they want to reap more positive from what they're investing. They don't want to reap the heartaches and the ups and downs and the fluctuations that make them tap out, because they're like, well, this is going to bankrupt me. This is just going to stress me to death. I can't do this. Got to be more vocal. We have to be more vocal and understand that you being more vocal is not belittling people who have a more dire situation than you do. But it's a part of a whole picture that we all need to know about. So when we're doing our studies and we're reporting all the facts and aspects of the factors of the fact, we can say, yep, this was a contributing factor that led to this. So if we overemphasize it, we can expect that it's going to continue to be more negative or more positive. But we can't do that if people continue to feel like they can't say anything because, well, I'd rather not be as vocal as I should be about it to everybody, but I'm going to go kick some rocks. I'm going to go punch some walls in the house. I'm going to go and slam the doors and break stuff and start arguments with people because I can control that, as opposed to the things I cannot control. We have to accept those things that we cannot control and fix those things that we can control. And once we become the rulers of those little things, those little minutiae, then we can elevate and become the rulers over the many things. That's the goal. But you can't get there if you're going back. You can't go backwards. The only place you're going to get is more frustrated, more dangerous, more dark, more undesirable outcomes. So I said all of that to say, be more vocal. Remember, mental health is physical wealth. See you next episode. Teddy, take us out of here.